Next in line is Tim Keith. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Texas Central Partners. Tim is part of a private Texas-based company that's in large and real estate and infrastructure projects. Mr. Keith has developed key relationships and perspectives that are very critical to TCP's success. He previously co-founded and served as Chief Investment Officer of HKS Capital Advisors. Prior to that, he was formerly the Global Chief Executive Officer of RREEF Deutsche Bank Infrastructure Investments, and served a term at Hunt Realty Investments as an executive there. I'd like you to welcome Tim Keith from Texas Central Partners.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having as good a day as I am. It's not every day I get to present to Texas rail advocates. This is a good thing in my life. So I want to say hello and spend a few moments enjoying the moment here. But we are at Texas Central are producing a big idea, right? This is a first-of-a-kind deployment of infrastructure in the United States. People look for patterns and have you done this before? How are you going to do this? We're blazing a trail. We're the Texas spirit, right? Microchips were invented here. People were sent to the moon from Texas. We can put people on rail just like we have people or goods on rail and move them throughout our state. And we're here to be one of the first to move them at 200 miles an hour. So it's a big opportunity for Texas. It's a big idea, and Texans aren't afraid of really big ideas. We're a privately sponsored company working for public good. We'll be a common carrier and provide any passenger transportation that buys a ticket. We're excited about that, and we're excited about helping innovate the way the world capitalizes infrastructure. Highways and roads are critical to Texas. The United States are the backbone of how we move our people and our goods and our ideas, quite frankly, and high-speed rail will help promote that. We're going to connect systems with systems. That's our ambition. So our train, sorry, I forgot about the technology piece here. So a little bit about the train. It'll be travel at speeds nearly 200 miles an hour, serve 3 stations initially, and have trains departing as frequently as every 30 minutes, particularly at peak hours. This is a very interesting mode of operation for us, and we're excited that we're here to bring it to you. A 90-minute trip from Dallas-Fort Worth to Houston is exciting. As a private company, we've identified the market out of 97 different city pairs, identified Dallas-Fort Worth to Houston is the best commercial market opportunity to be profitable with high-speed rail in America. Why? Because there's populations on both ends that will demand this service, and there's pent-up demand for it. Here's a little quick view of the technology. I'll speak as we go here. Hopefully it's going to roll. In any event, I'll give you the quick highlights. It's electric train, it's overhead powered, it's steel wheels on rail, and it is an 8-car train that we're building. We're going to have between 12 and 15. There's a 50-year track record of operating history of this train in Japan. Over 10 billion passengers move with 0 crashes and 0 fatalities. It's extremely safe and extremely proven. All of the trains in Japan and the system run within 1 minute of scheduled arrival. A couple of images from our deployments. First, an urban station in Tokyo, showing what it looks like in an urban environment. The top right is a rural setting with berms, where we've elevated the train above grade using earthworks. The bottom left is an example in Taiwan using viaducts. We have an initial analysis that showed about 60% of our system would be berms and about 40% would be viaducts. We're moving that around based, frankly, on hearings, what we're hearing from constituents, leaders, landowners, and other people, as well as working through engineering issues with our environmental process. I expect that we'll have substantially more viaduct than 40%, and it'll likely be as high as 70 to 80% entirely in viaduct. That'll provide a lot more predictability on our side from construction, from maintenance, allow a lot more access in terms of the obviousness of access for animals, equipment, and people. Also allows us, quite frankly, to more simply accommodate existing roads. We're a transportation company. We're trying to promote more free movement of people and goods, not prevent it. So the roads that exist today will continue to exist to be open, the public roads. And if we impact private access to private property, we'll have to replace that. But most importantly, with the viaduct structures, we're able to also accommodate future growth. The counties that we're going to serve and pass through will continue to grow, and we want to make sure that as good neighbors, they have the ability to see how we can help and sustain their growth, not be a prevention to it. So this project has huge benefits. It's not just great for Texas, for North Texas or Houston, but it's good for all of Texas. We're going to create an entirely new high-tech industry in Texas, bringing it to the U.S. from Japan. There's examples where this works very well around the world, in Europe and other places also. We'll have as many as 1,000 full-time jobs when we're done in the infancy of this new industry. Our perspective is we build this, prove it's commercially viable and profitable as a private enterprise, and many other Texans will ride this train and demand service for their cities. Whether it's Texas Central or other competitors from China, Japan, Germany, or France serving those needs, we'll find out. But we believe we're going to create a catalyst that will drive high-speed rail passenger service well beyond just Houston and Dallas. The impact from an economic perspective, about a $10 billion investment. We publicly say 10 to 12 billion. We use 10 for economic impact simply because we don't want to be accused of over-exaggerating impacts. 10 billion is a big number already. That'll spur 36 billion of direct economic impact. That's that 10 billion of investment, plus the salaries, plus the spend of the revenues and the operational impact of 25 years of service of this system. As a private company, we'll be a taxpayer, just like anybody else who owns land or property. We estimate we'll pay $2.5 billion over that same 25-year period to counties, to ISDs, to cities, and any other taxing jurisdiction through which we pass and touch. We'll become a major economic driver and provide permanent tax revenue to every community that we pass through. We'll be creating jobs not only in Dallas, Fort Worth, and in Houston, but we also have maintenance of way facilities spread about every 30 to 50 miles, 12 to 24 employees entering rural locations, providing good jobs, high-paying jobs for local residents, which we think is good. From a system perspective, we'll have emergency response plans approved by the FRA, and they'll require equipment greater in quantity and maybe newer in technology than exists in the middle part of our corridor, so we expect to be able to deliver new equipment as well as more modern equipment that'll generally lift the safety of the communities for life safety and response times for those communities without regard because of our system. I put $1 billion up there on the far right. We're going to invest over $1 billion in Grimes County, Texas. It's a rural community between Bryan College Station and Huntsville. It's where our third station is going to be. We're going to serve the Brazos Valley and try to attract not only the current residents that are there today, but also those 80,000 millennials that are going to college at A&M, at Blinn, and at Sam Houston State. Early adopters of technologies like rail, people that today only 3/4 are getting driver's licenses and owning cars. It's a credible shift and a chance for Texas to be at the forefront of serving the needs of the millennials in a way that we aren't today. You can look at a 30-minute commute from Grimes County to Northwest Houston, connect to Metro on the bus, or in conversations about making rail links to our station also. Thinking about a 50-minute commute to Dallas-Fort Worth. Think of all the Aggies going to games and other events. It's a pretty impressive opportunity. Texans want more choice. We've got population growth we've heard about today. We have 6 million people rounded on either side in North Texas and South Texas. That's 12 million people, with millions of people making trips between Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. There's already congestion. With the population doubling over the next 25 years or so to 12 million people on each end, you can envision in your mind the two cities growing closer together because the urban sprawl pushes out, but they're getting further apart by car and by plane because of congestion getting to airports and getting through the highways. We can be a part of that solution and take millions of people off the highway and avoid some of the declines in travel speeds and the increases in travel times between the two cities. It's time for rail in Texas. Why will people ride the train? And who will ride it? It's reliable. 400 trains a day in the Japan Central Rail system, multiple stops and cycles per train per day, 365 days a year. So almost 400,000 trips per year on this system. Every train, on average, arrives within 1 minute of scheduled time. That reliability, that predictability will help us manage our time and our schedules. It'll be convenient with up to 30-minute service at peak hours. It'll be comfortable. It's the widest train of the high-speed rail families, and it'll have 2x2 seating even in coach. A coach seat will be of similar proportion to a current first-class seat on an aircraft. It'll have shoulder room, head room, and foot room. It'll be a great, comfortable ride. But more importantly, people's time is becoming more and more valuable every day. Driving is a good solution for at least making use of your mobile phones. Hopefully nobody's texting while driving, only using their voice communications. But on our train, you'll have time delivered back to you. That 90 minutes you sit in your seat, you'll choose to work, create billable hours, work product, have the ability to read, catch up on conversation, or whatever you want, but your time becomes your own in a predictable and safe, comfortable environment. What will this cost? The next question I get usually. We're going to have variable priced segments in our system. Be based on demand, times of day, days of week, number of people demanding the train. Short notice travels will pay more, similar to an airline system or a hotel or a car rental system. And people that plan ahead or are fit certain segments that we target, such as students and others, will be able to attract at much lower prices. We're going to try to attract, identify and segment our population of potential consumers as thoroughly and scientifically as possible so we can maximize that ridership. We have 400 seats in each train, leaving every 30 minutes. Every empty seat is a lost dollar to me. I have to work hard to attract and fill those seats with as many people as possible. So how are we going to make this big idea become a reality? So building on the momentum. We've got Texans investing in the big idea. In July, I became CEO after 17 Texas families and individuals invested in this project. Transitioned it from being a feasibility study that had been in place for a couple of years into the development phase and execution phase. I've been able to build out my team substantially. We have several of those people here today, and if you haven't met them, please take time to do so. But we're recruiting world-class new members to our team, adding to the folks that were the original pioneers and the folks with the original big idea. It's a very powerful combination. We're also pursuing regulatory approvals and working with partners and communities. On the private financing, we talked about the $75 million of capital from Texans. Previous to that, $40 million was spent by the founders in the feasibility study process. And we have a partner named DHC, Dallas Houston Constructors, at their own risk, creating engineering work, taking us to 30% design and engineering that we believe is a value of $130 million that we don't have to pay for. They're taking the risk in exchange for the opportunity to be the design-build partner for the entire project. It's a very good thing for us and for them. Regulatory milestones, we have two major work streams going on. The first is the rule of particular applicability, my favorite phrase in the world, and the RPA is shortened to. And that's the rules written to drive a train at 200 miles an hour in Texas. There are no rules for moving a train over 150 passenger train in the United States. We're having special rules, having rules written to allow for that. They're based on how the system operates and that 50-year track record of safety in Japan. And we're about halfway through our environmental impact statement also. Expect to have a draft EIS this summer. It's a long process, and we've been working well with our partners at the FRA and at TxDOT, and are optimistic that we'll continue to make forward progress and be able to announce publicly milestones so that we can reach our final alignment. Currently, we have a single corridor identified, and we refer to it as the utility corridor. This is it. It generally follows a high-powered transmission line through from north to south Texas. It doesn't follow it at every point. There's topography, there's diversions that must be required, but we in the study have determined that this is the most ideal corridor. Within that, there are 6 alternative routes being studied. Those routes are being driven by technical impacts from the field, whether it be wetlands, topography, existing roads, communities, etc. And we expect to have one of those chosen through this environmental process as soon as possible. So communicating with stakeholders and communities is our number one initiative for the year. Our message has to get out. The facts have to be given to people in ways that they can understand and interpret for themselves. We entered the 2015 legislative session with no offense because we were not asking for anything. We were operating as a private company, as a private railroad in the state of Texas, doing what we should be doing. And so our business became a point of controversy, and we've moved quickly since then to make sure our message is getting out, that elected officials, that community leaders, and individual citizens know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's good for Texas. We've had 12 public scoping meetings led by the FRA, and 23 open houses stretching from Houston to Dallas-Fort Worth to talk about our project with landowners, with stakeholders, community leaders in each of the communities that we will be moving through and impacting. We've had over 300 speaking engagements in 2015, and I'm afraid we're going to break that record in 2016. It's going to be a very busy year for us. But getting our message out and talking to folks, and I've found as you move around the state, not just Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston, people love this idea. Why doesn't Texas have high-speed rail? Why should it not? And there's a large majority of people that want it. We're going to give a voice to that majority. That's the important thing. Legislators need to hear the voice of the voters, not just the people that support it, not just the voters that don't support it. And that's my number one ambition for the year, and we're working hard on that. So in conclusion, this is a huge thing. It's big for Texas, it's big for the United States, it's big for the world. We're on a global stage. We're going to attract private equity from global providers of infrastructure investment. From the U.S., from Canada, Australia, you name it, we'll have interest from all over the world. We already do. And we've attracted, or brought together a project of enormous scale and proportion that some people's eyes roll back in their heads, some people get excited. It's a big thing and staggering, and we're going to make it happen. And we're here to solicit your support. So what can you do? During the session, this group, particularly Peter, and where's Peter? Thank you. He came and testified on our behalf and helped protect us as different bills were being lodged that would have had negative impact on the project. We'd like you to continue the advocacy as a group. So pick up your cell phone and text the word big idea to 52886, and you'll immediately be registered to be an advocate for us. You'll collect your name and email address, and we'll be able to reach out to you when we need you, whether it be now or the next legislative session. But we'll be giving a voice to the majority so the majority can get the rail system they demand. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to questions and answers if there's a few moments for that. Don't stop texting. Hang on, put my glass. Oh, there are people out there. Yes, sir.
As Commissioner Vandergrift said, giving you the option to fail, and none of us want that, but our Mythbusters friends always say failure is an option. You know, some people are asking that. If you do have issues or run into troubles, is that something that the state would take over, or what would happen then?
That's a great question. I think that Senator Huffines and Commissioner Vandergrift addressed that each, but the answer is the state, in my opinion, would never take over the system. Fundamentally, they aren't equipped to purchase something like this. They're not permitted to do it. But more importantly, as a private piece of investment, the private markets would solve any problem that we were facing. If we, for some reason, weren't cash flow positive, there would be a cash flow or revenue stream there that the private markets would value. Look at Energy Future Holdings and Encore. They're bankrupt. Moving power to people's houses into this hotel is way more important than moving people from Houston to Dallas. The state did not step in and take that over. The private market solved that problem. It's a private company. It had revenue streams. It had overcapitalized itself. And the private markets fixed that. We would be the same type of situation. Critical infrastructure in place has permanent value. And the state would not ever be positioned to do that, in my opinion. Yes, ma'am. So the location of the station in Houston has not been identified specifically. The area between I-10 and 290 along 610 is the target zone, and we've got multiple sites under consideration in our environmental study. Yes, sir.
Could you comment briefly on the expected fare structure?
We just launched this morning at the beginning of our market segmentation analysis. So it will be highly segmented, and it'll be variable based on time of day of week, class of service. So it'll be priced to, on the upper end, compete with airlines for business travelers, and on the lower end, pull people out of vehicles. Not just business people out of vehicles, but families and individual passengers. Yes, sir.
On the issue of getting the train to Fort Worth, there's 2 million people in Tarrant County, and I guess my question is, why do you not see it as that you can, after running the train from all the way from Houston to Dallas, that you couldn't justify the expense of going on to Fort Worth with it?
Excellent. So why not go all the way to Fort Worth? Same question is, why not have multiple stops in Houston? And it's simple, economics to begin with. As a private company, we have to be profitable and commercially viable. So we've identified the proper route that's the most suitable from an environmental perspective and a regulatory perspective. But I'd love to grow fast as far as I could. Yes, sir.
Great deal of opposition to the Texas Central Railroad. And what are you doing to work with those people to try to get them under the tent and get them as advocates for the high-speed train? Thank you.
Sure. Our opposition, it does reside primarily in the counties between Harris and Dallas, and we're working hard to have communication with them, particularly leadership as well as individual landowners. And we finished our most recent open house series in December, just before the holidays. And we held 10 of them throughout the corridor, and we met with lots of landowners who were and were not impacted. We were also meeting with community leaders. So the answer to your question is we're meeting with landowners one-on-one, talking about their property. It's very personal, and understanding if there is an impact, what does it mean to them, and what does that mean to us, and how do we purchase their property in a way that accommodates their needs to the best ability that we can. Yes, sir. I have more than a guess. What can I say about it? It will be probably 20 minutes from Bryan College Station and 20 to 30 from both Huntsville and Bryan College Station, somewhere in that north-south corridor. Time for one more question. Or, if your hands are idle, pull out your cell phone and text. And this, I forgot to say, this is a live, these pens drop as people text in and get signed up, so it's a barometer of performance. I can't step down, though, until we get at least 26 or 27% participation, because the last 2 meetings this week I've been moving up and up by each notch, so this is the advocates. I have to outperform everybody else this week. Last question.
And the reason for going more with viaducts?
Yeah, so in the community meetings that we were just talking about in Jewett and all the way through the entire corridor, people are concerned about access to the land, impact on their land. Can they use the land around our property? And so the answer is yes. It is much more expensive to build viaducts, but it is a much more neighborly way to enter the community. We're going to have a long-term relationship with people. We hear what they're saying. If they have something, they would prefer the viaducts. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your support, and keep on texting.